Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree, Mr. President?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
Well, the Fifth Amendment says...
I don't know. It might say that.
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president?
I don't know. I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said.
The president claims he does not know what the Fifth Amendment is. You would think he wouldn't be able to forget it since he invoked it nearly 400 times and 450 times 2 years ago during the New York AG's civil investigation into his businesses. Mark Joseph Stern joins us now. We need him to make us smarter tonight. He's a senior writer covering the courts at Law and Slate. Mark, as we watch these cases involving the administration and immigration policy, we keep hearing about due process applying to non-citizens. Many people are asking why. Can you explain this?
Absolutely. Due process is guaranteed by the Constitution in two different places. It was one of the foundational guarantees that the founders of this country insisted upon. It was a key cause of the revolution. It traces its roots all the way back to the Magna Carta in 1215. And I say all that because these are not just words on a page. This is one of the most foundational promises of a free and democratic society. Without due process, any of us can be snatched up off the street, imprisoned, deported, without any trial, without any hearing, without a judge even taking a look to see if there are charges against us, to see if those charges are legitimate. It is fundamentally anti-American to reject the premise of due process. After the Civil War, one of the very first things that the Reconstruction Congress did was apply the guarantee of due process to the states so that everyone would be protected. The states, the federal government, the president himself, every single government official in this country must respect every person's right to due process, not just every citizen, not just every lawful immigrant, but every person. That's not me riffing. That is the language of the Constitution. It literally could not be clearer.
They must, but they're not. So what does this moment mean that we have to rely on the courts to hold the line? Have we ever seen our Constitution been tested in this way like this before?
I think only the Civil War could be a comparison to our current moment. To see a president and frankly also a Congress abandon these basic premises of our Constitution. The framers really did not envision a president as corrupt and lawless as Trump entering office. They constructed an office whose holder would not be able to wield so much power and push down so many checks and balances. Unfortunately, the United States Supreme Court took away a lot of the checks and balances on the president in decisions like the horrible immunity ruling from last summer. And so we are left now with a president who feels understandably that he's empowered to push aside any constitutional restrictions that clash with his agenda. He came in saying he wanted to do mass deportations, and the reality is you cannot do deportations at that scale without violating due process, the rights of both immigrants and citizens who will be caught up in those raids. I mean, we had ICE raids here in Washington, D.C. today, masked agents bursting into restaurants, attempting to arrest undocumented immigrants. What if a citizen was there and was Hispanic and didn't have their passport on them and got snatched up and put on a plane that was sent to El Salvador? Without due process, that person is gone, possibly forever. That's why the Supreme Court intervened recently to try to put some restraints on what Trump is doing here. But the Supreme Court has not been a consistent protector of liberty under this administration yet, and I really hope it wakes up to the threat that Trump poses.
Okay, well, Mark, there's a reason the president thinks he can do whatever he wants, because he is. Look at what he's doing in his private businesses, in crypto and social media. Like, how is all of this not violating the Emoluments Clause?
The Emoluments Clause, the prohibition on bribery, one of the very few express restrictions spelled out in the impeachment clause of Article 2, that the president may not engage in bribery. Yet here he is essentially taking money from the UAE, other foreign sovereigns, and billionaires through his scammy crypto scheme in order to enrich himself and his family. It is utterly outrageous. The Emoluments Clause, as you mentioned, there are two. He is violating both of them. He is accepting gifts, both domestic and foreign through this crypto scam in order to make himself wealthy off of his office, the framers would have been aghast, but they also would have thought that Congress would step in. You know, their mechanism here that they envisioned really wasn't the courts as the first line of defense. They always said, James Madison put it this way, ambition counters ambition. They thought that Congress would see a president acting this venal, if it got to that, step in, impeach, and remove him. But because the Republican Party has become a cult of personality around Trump, we are not seeing the system operate the way it was intended. It is failing. The courts can only do so much to protect us from a Congress that is simply refusing to fulfill its constitutional obligations.
Well, they thought wrong. If the Emoluments Clause doesn't spell it out, look at the New York Times reporting. You know what it spells? Corruption. Mark, thank you.